So it's the last Tuesday in April of 2021, a slightly milky, sunny afternoon here in the Solace garden. And it's just over a year now since I started making these small films in the garden, giving some guidance around Tai Chi and Qigong and meditation. And already this year I've prepared the meditation platform as I did last year, and this year I think it's looking its best. And the moon pond, which is a little way down there, also looking very nice. And yesterday into today was the full spring moon, and we had an evening of glorious moonlight. So I thought I'd bring into mind and talk a little bit about Tai Chi as a means of stability in one's life. Tai Chi and meditation. Coming at it perhaps a little from the self-defense aspect of Tai Chi. Tai Chi is developed from Taoism, and in the body is a martial art or an art of self-defense. Self-defense, self-stability are very much a pair, I would say. So really there are demonstrated in the Tai Chi forms two kinds of stability. One which is steadiness, standing, and the other is a stability found in moving around. In order to find a balance, perhaps around a steady point. So in standing steadily, we might say that we are, you are, I am, the solid ground. And in the flowing aspect of stability, we move around on that solid ground. One thing that moving around allows is the ability to move out of one's own way and not get trapped in the repetitions of habit or self-enforcing disciplines that we no longer need after a certain time. And it's interesting that in a situation where we become stuck, perhaps through an injury or a personal experience that sticks us, our mind goes constantly to that aspect, the injury, the being stuckness. And we find it very hard to move out of our own way, to make space. So I made a little film earlier in the morning demonstrating three means through physical action of beginning to learn how we might move out of our way and find a means of moving on. So I'm just going to play that to you now, and while you're doing that I'm going to have my tea. And it's interesting to me that as I was making this tea today, this is, I had to put on my glasses. It's called Imu Oolong, and I think Imu characters mean 1 acre, 1 parcel of ground, and it's from Taiwan. It's a very delicious tea, in fact, and it's extraordinary to me that in China, Taiwan, there is a small acre of land being farmed by a family, Mr. Xie's tea estate, and that through the means of miracle, really, this little tea has arrived in my table in North London via the importer's postcard teas. And I noticed that the estate is called Mingjian. That might be like the terroir in French viticulture. So Mingjian, I only have the romanization of the Chinese characters here. But these two words, certainly in some aspects of Chinese, could be translated as Ming, meaning bright, as in moonlight, and Jian means sword, or it can mean sword. So Mingjian, bright sword, or moon sword. And a moon sword would most certainly be an instrument of wisdom. And it's pertinent because in the little part of the film that I've made to show you, I demonstrate some guidance of getting out of your own way using a Chinese sword. So here comes the film. I'm just going to have my tea and also a morsel of this delicious banana cake. And when the film is played through, you'll come back to me here, and I'm just going to say a little bit more about self-stability in terms of meditation. So I thought I would demonstrate 3 forms that express the ability of being out of the way, getting out of your own way, you could say, which is a principle of martial arts, Tai Chi in this instance. So the first is to demonstrate with bare hands, empty hand form, and you may have seen this in one of my earlier films. This exercise is generally speaking called the monkey juggles the teacups. And if I show myself to you slightly side on, you'll get a clearer image here. So imagine 2 palms, and in each palm a cup of tea. And the monkey, myself in this instance, juggles the teacups through the spiral of his movement without spilling a drop from either cup. And in order to do this, several examples of getting out of your own way come to bear. So firstly, there are 2 cups, which mean that the mind has to be in 2 places. And one place remains steady, and one place has flowing movement. So in this place, my right hand has the movement, but I have to keep something in the stillness of my left hand. And then that exchanges. So my right hand is still, and my left hand has the play of movement. And in fact, the whole of the body, ankle, knee, hip, side, shoulder, head, move out of the way. In the very first instance of this action, if I don't bring my hip within, my hand cannot pass through this space. So if I don't get out of my way, tea dribbles down my front, down my leg. And there are several versions of this simple, playful exercise. It makes you feel light-hearted. Here the spiral of the teacup moves forward, and the empty hand remains still in the front. On the other side too. Always getting out of the way. And in a further development, both hands make the spiral action, forward and backwards, which means that my center, in the middle of my body, has to be very fluid, adapting to getting out of my own way. So that's a very simple, empty hand version of moving out of my way. It's just empty the teacups. Well, another way of exploring this dimension is to use an external property. And in this case, I'm going to use first a sword, and then thirdly, the longer stick. So sword, straight sword here, is a traditional instrument of the Tai Chi form practice. And this is derived from a fighting sword, Chinese fighting sword. Straight blade, double-edged, pommel, hilt, so forth. Strong here, flexible here, sharp to piercing and razoring at the end. So different properties. And a bit like the monkey with the teacups, we need to have our mind in the fullness of the blade. So not just only at the stabby part at the end, but also at the guarding part, closer to the frame, closer to the body. In this simple exercise of intercepting to left and right, if I slow it down a little, you can see that I am getting out of my own way, removing the center of my body, which is the target, center line that would be, and in that aspect, making a self-defense of my posture. So the sword that is coming toward me, perhaps in an attacking motion, hopes to find the target here, but instead finds that I have moved the target to here. So by moving myself, getting out of my own way, I have moved the target to, and something else has happened, which is to my advantage. In that by moving my target out of the way, I have brought the tip of my sword to bear. In an interceptive, targeted attack. So self-defense with intervention. This is sword play. And again, it brightens the spirit to externalize the movement into another object. And lots of very beautiful, slightly poetic forms could be made with the sword. So like a real sword, your practice sword is treated with care, gongfu, looked after. This is made from teak, by a friend of mine in fact, from one piece of teak. It's a beautiful piece of work and has a lovely balance. So now in the third instance, I'm going to take a different property. This is a straight stick. That's all it is, it's a stick. And these are used for training purposes, for weight purposes, develops the shoulders and forearms. It's a natural fluid strength. And for the training practice, a stick of about 6 foot, 6 foot bit is generally used. Sticks that are more developed into weapons would be a good deal longer, 9 foot plus, and then sometimes with a pike or a spear formed at the end. So it's a two-handed weapon or two-handed application of getting out of the way. You can see that there's a strength and a power simply in holding the stick, manipulating the stick, thrusting with the stick, even simply standing. And manipulating the stick in several ways demonstrate again the ability through practice, a little bit of looseness there, of getting out of your own way. So here the stick is wheeled over the shoulder, caught through each hand and passed across the body. And in order to do that, if I slow the action down, I have to get out of my own way in order to make the pass and the wheel of the stick. So that's over the shoulder, and this one would be under the shoulder. And again, it's the movement of my center line, that allows me to pass the stick across my posture from side to side, to take it easily into the hand. And you might be able to hear the tap of my ring against the stick. I would say if you are going to practice, remove any loose jewelry in particular on the fingers and the wrists. And these patterns, these circles, again, taking yourself out of the way of the movement. Very playful, very enjoyable, and they build a natural strength. It's quite different from weightlifting, although there is some weight in the stick, of course, in that you are encouraging the muscle to facilitate the movement of the anatomy of the frame, rather than, as can sometimes happen in weight training exercises, rather than binding the muscle to the frame and producing a kind of muscle bound strength, which is lacking in flexibility and pliancy. So if you want to just practice for strength purposes, to hold the stick in your standing posture in different parts, to use applications, as I showed you at the beginning. To stand. In the frame, in the posture. So 3 methods, 1 empty palmed, 1 with the sword, 1 with the stick, of keeping out of your own way. So the cake and the tea were delicious. I realized that in the little film I made, I didn't really show you what the consequences are of using the weapons, the stick in particular, of not getting out of your own way. If the hand is too loose, the stick flies through it and accidents happen. If it's too gripped, you whack yourself over the back of your head or your shin. Ankles in particular are vulnerable. So getting out of your own way is indeed a means of self-defense. As to stability in meditation, it's a very important aspect. Simply having a daily practice will bring stability. And that's the most important grounding. The posture itself will bring stability. Self-stability is developed from that posture, that steadiness in the seat. So in making my meditation, normally on a cushion here, I sit. You could say Tim sits. It's sometimes when I sit, when Tim sits, I, like all of us who practice, find it hard to enter in on our way to samadhi. So there is a method that I've adopted and practice sometimes. This isn't every day. Is to sit in a different form. So it's still myself. Tim sits. Yet I might sit as an old man. This is a different form. And had the ancestral stream that brought me here been ever so slightly different, I might be sitting as something entirely different. So a small adjustment makes a big difference. I might sit in the form of a young woman. I might sit in the form of a person from a different race than my own. Do you see? By moving into a different form, you begin to move away from your own mind to a more original mind, ancestral mind. There is no gender there, no race there, not always the human person there. So Eastern thought, Chinese, Japanese, Korean thought likes to take animals as a means of expressing differentness within humanness. This is quite difficult. So let's just take two animals, and they often come together in Chinese thought. One is a crane, and the other is a tortoise. And these are complementary animals, which doesn't mean they say to each other when they greet, "Hello, Mr. Crane, you're looking well in the feather today," and "Hello, Mr. Tortoise, you're looking shiny of back." But they are complementary in the way of adding something to the other. And that adding of something to the other is often by means of the naming of home truths, you could say. The tortoise might say to the crane, "My, when you open your wings, what a long shadow you cast. And when the wind comes, you're flighted." And the crane might say to the tortoise, "My, how low to the ground you are, and how very slow." But in fact, these two animals are complementary. One is a jewel of the air and heaven. The other is a jewel of the earth. And often in the imagery of crane and tortoise, you'll see the crane standing, being borne along on the back of the tortoise. And sometimes, by taking a feather in his mouth, the tortoise is lifted up by the crane and wonders at the roundness of the world. So sometimes, when I sit, Tim sits, I sit as crane. And on another day, I might be tortoise. By this means, I move out of my own way. And in doing so, progress, change, develop. And I'm going to finish with a little challenge for you, which is, in daily life situation, see if you could have a conversation amongst friends, just in a normal daily situation, as I say, but without using the word I, me, I am, I'm, mine, or myself. Just for 10 minutes. And let me know how you get on. If you enjoy and gain a benefit from these films of guidance, then do please share them forward where you think they might happily land. And if you would like to make a gift in appreciation, you can do so at timstudio.co.uk/pay-gift and click on the donate button.